now. The UK's National Security Advisor, Sir Stephen Lovegrove, has warned of the threat that China, yes, China, not Russia, poses to the UK. In a speech at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies, he cited the proliferation and modernisation of China's nuclear arsenal. He also said that Cold War safeguards, which prevented the West from miscalculating a nuclear war, do not actually exist with China. Let's get the views now of Doug Stokes, Professor and Director of Strategy and Security Institute at the University of Exeter. Doug, thanks for joining us. Wasn't that long ago we were sort of hearing the warnings about Putin and his nuclear threat. Are we just trying to cover all bases now?
Well, it's a very good point. And I think what you're hinting at is obviously we are located in Europe, and there's a major war in Europe, i.e. Russia's aggression in Ukraine, but China's a long, long way away. And I think your last guest made the point. There's been quite significant defence cuts over a long, long time now, and are we just spread too thin? So I think that in 2021 there was the Integrated Defence Review, which still guides to some extent UK foreign security policy, but that was obviously came before the Ukraine crisis.
Yeah.
So I think that what we need to do now is to really rethink things and also get a sort of broader, bigger picture as well, not just on the operational and tactical level, but also on the sort of grand strategic level about what kind of foreign and security policy we need going forward into the future.
So changing our thinking maybe, because, of course, there were people warning about not just Ukraine, but the Baltic states as well, and similar warnings about Taiwan, which could be the critical point. And America has not really wanted to go too far in saying we will defend them, although they've said that now. And this really could be where China's a difficult issue to address.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, today I think Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, and the Congress is off to Taiwan, and Biden can't stop her from doing that. And obviously, it's a major sort of big deal for China. I mean, China ultimately sees Taiwan as part of the Chinese mainland. It's kind of part of the sort of Chinese nationalist kind of ideology. So Taiwan is a big deal for China. But obviously, it's a long way. I mean, and the problem with Taiwan, obviously, is the US has defense commitments to Taiwan, and that's kind of vague. But broadly speaking, there's been a long-term defense commitment to Taiwan, and so obviously there's the chain gang problem. If China does go into Taiwan, if it fires at Taiwan, if it invades Taiwan, it could drag the US in, and insofar as it drags the US in, it could drag the other sort of democratic states into a much broader conflict with what is ultimately a nuclear armed power, i.e. China, and also a very technologically advanced power.
Yeah. Well, let's address that issue of nuclear, because that's the big scare story, isn't it? I mean, what happened to that principle of mutually assured destruction?
Well, that principle exists, but the problem is, if you look at a lot of the war gaming around China, God forbid, but say, for example, a major war happened with China, the first thing that the West would do, the US in particular, would take out China's satellites and its communications technology. And so it would potentially cut off the Chinese leadership from the capacity to fire its own nuclear weapons very, very quickly. In other words, there's a very, very quick escalatory cycle that could take place over a very short period of time. So there are different war game strategies. I won't go too far into them. I can if you want me to, but I won't go into all the different sort of strategic ways of war with China.
Yeah.
That's a major threat, and so mutually assured destruction does actually exist, and obviously the whole logic of nuclear deterrence is because ultimately, if you go to war, two nuclear powers go to war, you are talking about mutually assured suicide because there's deterrent capacity there.
Doug, finally, what's your assessment of the situation with Ukraine? I mean, we're getting some reports that Russia may have lost half of its capability in infantry through deaths and injuries. I mean, do you share that sort of assessment?
Well, I think basically Ukraine has been an absolute strategic disaster for Russia. It couldn't have gone worse. Not necessarily talking about what's happened on the ground. There's a report today, I think, in today's Telegraph, picked up on the damage done to the Russian economy. But going forward, I mean, Russia has overplayed its hand but it's now very much contained, economically strangled. It's a vassal, little more than a vassal state of China. And and this isn't a great thing necessarily. It's a good thing strategically, but it's not good for the Russian people. But Putin's aggression in Ukraine has really set Russia back. It now has NATO right on its borders, i.e. Finland and Sweden. Finland has massive artillery pieces. So it has it all. So it's completely contained, and it's a losing game for Russia.
Doug, at the University of Exeter, thanks very much indeed for your expert analysis of the situation. Thanks for your time. Well, let's get the views of Christian, because you were indicating that it's not just, of course, the issue about our domestic army, but we've still got this threat out there, and perhaps we've taken our eye off China when we've been concentrating so much on Russia.
Possibly, but I mean, China, of course, has given tacit and possibly even more support to Russia over Ukraine, haven't they? The Russians asked them for military and economic support. I'm not aware that we know whether they did or they didn't give it. But, I mean, they're hand in glove over all that. And I think it's a sense of pride for Putin. He regards Ukraine as part of Russia, and China regards Taiwan as part of China ever since Shanghai.
So it's the same mindset.
It's the same mindset, and it's a point of pride. Well, I think Taiwan would be a lot less easy to take. Not that Ukraine is proving a pushover, and I don't think Russia will succeed. I pray they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the island.
I think Washington has too said about Taiwan. No further.
It's armed to the teeth, and it's an island, so I think it would be pretty difficult for the Chinese, and I think they realise that really would be
still frightening times.
But I think, China has apparently increased its military defence spending, increased it by 7%. I mean, I think they are absolutely the ones to be feared, and their tentacles are going all out their hegemony, all over over Asia,
Japanese islands.
Absolutely, and I think the spread of their authority and all over the world, I can't think of the word, is really frightening. I mean, they're going into Africa, they're buying out companies. I mean, we had all the row here with the whatever the 4G company was. Huawei, that's right. We all learnt how to pronounce it. So, I think China is a very terrifying prospect.